You may be seated. As this is the first full council this year, I'm wishing everyone a happy new year, and I hope you had a good time with your families. Anyone is welcome to record this meeting, provided they do not disturb the conduct of the meeting. More information is available in the agenda. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting is being filmed and made available to view in live and archive form via the council's website. If you're seated in the public gallery, it is possible that the cameras may capture your image. If you wish to avoid being filmed, it is recommended you make a member of staff aware and they will direct you where to sit. The Westgate Garden gates are locked after sunset and members of the public shall leave the Guildhall by the side exit behind the glass door. Should the fire alarm sound, please leave through the nearest safe exit. The assembly point will be the Tower House car park. Andrew, do we have any apologies?
We have apologies from councillors Ian and Jeanette Stockley, Peter Auld, Simon Worley and Alex Ricketts.
Thank you. We now move on to item 2, declarations of councillors' interest. I'd like to invite Councillor Baldock, Sol and Karnak and the Green Party group leader to each make a statement that any declarations of interest by members of their respective groups are declared again by any of those members present at this meeting. Councillor Baldock.
Lord Mayor, any declaration of interest made by the members of the Labour Group are declared again for the purpose of this those present at this meeting.
Same for the Lib Dem group.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Same for the Conservative group.
And the same for the Green group, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Would any other member like to make a declaration at this point? Councillor Sol.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just for sake of full transparency, in relation to item 8, the council tax support scheme for working age customers, can I just declare that I'm a member of Kent County Council and also the Fire Authority, as both those organisations have taken part in the consultation on that.
Thank you. That's noted. Councillor Brady.
I have this on the website, but I also have those interests. I didn't realise I would need to give them because they're already on the website, but just to clarify what Mr. Sell said.
Thank you. Noted. We have one petition for this meeting. Could I invite Richard Norman to present the petition? You have 3 minutes to cover your points.
Our petition says, in view of the impact which local government reorganisation will have at the local level, we, the undersigned, ask the council to hold a free and open debate this evening so that all councillors can share their views on a district-wide community governance review for all parish areas and the case for democratic representation at the most local level, including the need for new town and parish councils. And as you see, that mirrors the wording of the motion for item 10B, and we're saying that as members of the public, we support that motion. I want to make 2 points. First, this is about a community governance review. It's not about what the outcome of such a review should be. You know that some of us would like to see town councils for Canterbury, Herne Bay and Whitstable. Not everyone agrees, so we need a debate on that. We know there's interest in the idea of area neighbourhood committees as recommended by national government for new unitary authorities. But area neighbourhood committees would not be elected, they would not be directly accountable, and the government's advice on them is that their membership should include not only a range of stakeholders and councillors from the unitary authority, but also councillors from town and parish councils. And we don't have those town councils. So there's a debate to be had about the relationship between town councils and area neighbourhood committees. And we need a community governance review so that that debate can happen. Now, I know that some of you are reluctant. Some of you have referred to the experience of the CGR in Whitstable recently, and you've said we don't want to go through that again. But we're in a very different situation now. And the question to be put has changed. The question to be put to the local people now is, what democratic arrangements do you want to put in place at the local level now that we no longer have a district council? How can we address the democratic deficit? How can local people influence the decisions that are made about the future of where they live? And it's to address those questions that we need a community governance review. The second point to make is that we need that CGR quickly. We need it now. You know that it's on the agenda for the Cabinet meeting on the 19th. If Cabinet doesn't decide to go ahead then, the danger is that we'll be left behind and lose out. If it's left to the new unitary authority whether to hold a community governance review, it wouldn't be a priority for them. The rest of East Kent would already either have town councils or is already now holding community governance reviews. If we haven't already had a CGR by then the new unitary authority will assume there's no great appetite for it. And experience elsewhere in the country suggests that we then have to wait many years for anything to be done. So that's why we need Cabinet to make a decision on the 19th, and that's why we're asking you to have a free and open debate this evening so that the views of all of you can feed into that Cabinet decision. It's your opportunity. Please take it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Councillor Chris Cornell to respond.
Thank you, Richard. Having listened to councillors and local groups, it is this Cabinet's emerging intention to carry out a community governance review before the end of his council term. This was signalled by Councillor Baldock in his public comments to Cabinet on the 8th of December and has been discussed internally as part of the budget setting process as far back as September. A report on how a community governance review can most be effectively brought forward is coming to Cabinet this month, with more detail on its timing and its budget. This discussion is essential as early indications are that a CGR could cost upwards of £100,000 and is not funded through the current LGR reserve. We're aware of the need to expedite this so that future town councils can be elected before the new unitary is established. With well over 70,000 unparished electors in this district, it is worth noting that any CGR will be a complex affair and will inevitably require a considerable amount of officer time, which needs balancing with the programme of work we're already committed to. This year, we've agreed to run consultations on Reg 19 of a local plan and local government reorganisation. The larger geography and tight timescales, which are let out by legislation, may require us to use outside consultants, and the final piece of work may differ from the approach we took in Whitstable as a result of a public petition. Local residents have always had the right to trigger a CGR through the gathering of a petition of electors, as set out in the 2010 Guidance on Community Governance Reviews, and have both chosen not to in Canterbury or failed to hit the threshold in Herne-Bay's case. We believe that it is prudent to proceed, but the public interest in this issue has historically not been significant. Protocol has been relaxed today to allow for debate on CGR, but I'd suggest this isn't the place for pre-prepared lines on the importance of what we want, and as has Richard has suggested. Evidence from the Whitstable CGR shows that a community governance review doesn't mean that town councils will automatically happen, and many people will roll their eyes to see councillors making the case for more councillors or their next jobs. It is our job as elected officials in charge of the CGR to answer the question and analyse the results. It's not our job to preempt the conclusion or give anyone grounds to suggest that we aren't undertaking the analysis fairly and without prejudice. I was confident that members of the working group did this last time, and I want to have a similar confidence again. As someone who will be involved in pulling together this work, I hope that colleagues can use the debate later to help discuss how they think the work should be pulled together, the thresholds of support they'd like to see for us to be able to enforce any change, whether they'd like to see us use existing wards or the new electoral commission ones, whether or how they'd like us to see us split wards, consider historic parish boundaries, or opportunities for adjacent parish councils to expand or merge. I'd like to ask people how they think we could best calculate the proposed precepts, and what level or type of engagement should be carried out. In contrast to the Whitstable CGR, which was led by a petitioner who had set the geography and asked a very singular, clear question, a new review led by us will inevitably be shaped more by the questions and the approach that we choose to take as a council. In summary, the report coming to Cabinet will discuss how a CGR can be carried out, not if we need one. This is said now to expedite the discussion for later and to ensure there's no modicum of doubt. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we also note that this petition will be considered by council under agenda item 10B? I do not have any announcements, but I would like to invite the leader and cabinet members to make any announcements they may have. Councillor Cornell.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to make an announcement on the Biggleston lampposts. There's been quite a lot of media coverage on them over the last week, and I want to set out the latest work that we have been undertaking alongside some of the Kent County Council officer colleagues. So by way as an update, Canterbury City Council management have been meeting with both engineering and heritage officers, and this work is now being treated as a priority. Kent County Council has a new heritage officer who's picking this up, and our own heritage officer is doing the same. The heritage lampposts produced by the Biggleston Foundry are a vitally important part of Canterbury's built heritage. They're not just street furniture, but they're really locally distinctive, and they help define the character of our historic streets. Retaining, referencing, and where necessary, replicating that legacy is a clear objective for this council. At the same time, we appreciate we must strike a pragmatic balance between heritage outcomes, public safety and cost, since a full cast iron replacement costs upwards of £5,000 each. Since 2020, cast iron columns have only been replaced where they've been unsafe, and that's usually with internal corrosion or underground damage or vehicular damage. These can't be fixed just by repainting. Full refurbishment is often impractical and prohibitively expensive. We do agree. In those cases, steel columns with heritage-style features have often been used. Kent County Council reuse the original ornate lanterns, and this does deliver some sense of continuity and value for money. Importantly, we, Canterbury City Council, we have our own Biggleston-style mould commissioned through the Levelling Up Fund as part of the Connected Canterbury work to improve our public spaces. And much of that's happening right now. We're casting upwards of 20 cast iron columns for our own public spaces. And of course, this mould would be available for Kent County Council to use where appropriate, and others. Alongside this, we are working with Kent County Council to develop a Canterbury-specific embellishment kit, not a generic one, one that's really pertinent and references our own city. And that will be based on some of the Biggleston design. Officers from ourselves and from Kent County Council are meeting to discuss this, the feasibility, the costs, and where cast iron full replacements might genuinely be required, such as the city centre and World Heritage Site buffer zone. It is the wish of the Cabinet that those particular zones, the city centre and the World Heritage Site buffer zones, do get cast iron replacements, and this is being discussed with Kent County Council. Finally, our Heritage Officer is developing a new Heritage Strategy Action Plan for this year and next year, 26-27, and that will bring together all heritage-related interventions and initiatives across departments. Street lighting can and will be included within that framework. Members can also reference our existing outdoor lighting guidance, which sits as an SPD to the current local plan. These, both and future inclusion in future Reg 19, are about setting out a clear, joined-up long-term approach that delivers safety, heritage and value for money. As a final note, there is an agreement with Kent County Council that nothing will happen to the Cossington Road lampposts until further discussions on how these can be replaced in a sympathetic and heritage-adjacent way is decided. Thank you.
Thank you. Joint Chief Executives, do you have any announcement?
No, thanks, Lord Mayor.
Item 5, there are no recommendations from Cabinet for this meeting, and there are no recommendations from committees and boards for this meeting. We now move to item 7, setting the council tax base 2026 to 2027. Could I invite the leader, Councillor Alan Baldock, to propose, and the deputy leader, Councillor Mike Saul, to second the resolution?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. She's setting the council tax base 26-27. I'd like to propose the resolution. Propose that the resolution points A to F as set out in the agenda. We read them out, but I guess they're all in your agenda if you want to reference them, and obviously Mike will probably refer to some of those as well later as we go through. So thank you, that's my proposal.
Seconded, Lord Mayor.
Do you wish to speak, Councillor Saul?
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm sure we're all glad that the leader didn't read out A to F, because it's a lot longer than I'm actually going to speak myself talking about this item. It's one of those motions where the resolution effectively says it all. We do this at the same time every year because we're required to do it in accordance with the local authorities' collection of council tax base England Regulations 2012, which I recommend to all of you for nighttime reading. These regulations set out how councils must calculate the council tax base. The regulations require authorities to use a standard formula based on Band D equivalents, ensuring consistency across the country. The regulations also reflect the introduction of local council tax reduction schemes, which replaced the former council tax benefit, and require this to be factored into the calculation. In addition, councils must take account of all relevant discounts, exemptions and premiums, and make a realistic estimate of how much council tax is actually likely to be collected. And finally, the regulations set out clear deadlines for notifying major precepting authorities such as the police and fire services. And as you can see from the report, that's all been done. So I've got no further comments to make other than to endorse the recommendation.
Thank you. Would any other member like to speak on this? Councillor Carnac.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I just had one thing I wanted to comment on, which is the implementation of the second home council tax premium for unoccupied but furnished properties. And I know there are exceptions, but I think a lot of us had residents over the past year who were in the sad situation of going through probate after the loss of a family member. And we generally give 18 months for that. But I just ask that we can, I know we gave grace on a number of cases, but I just ask if, given that the property market is very slow at the moment and that a lot of people are struggling to sell within that 12 months or 18 months, that we actually look quite favourably on those people who are struggling through that period of grief and then find that they're subjected to having to pay these additional premiums. Thank you.
Councillor Saul?
Well, thank you, Lord Mayor. Can I just say we'll take those comments on board and take them back, but it's not appropriate for me to comment any further tonight.
Thank you. Could we take a recorded vote, Andrea?
So that's carried unanimously.
Thank you. We're moving on to item 8, changing the council tax support scheme for working age customers. Could I invite Councillor Alan Baldock to propose and Councillor Mike Saul to second the resolution?
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to propose that Canterbury City Council adopt the proposed council tax support scheme for working age customers as of the 1st of April this year. Thank you.
Seconded, Lord Mayor, and I have a few comments to make, if I may. Thank you. There's a great deal in this report, and I do appreciate some of it can be a bit dense, but it perhaps, because of this technical nature of this agenda item, it hasn't received the publicity that it really deserves. So I'd like to keep my comments quite simple and focus on the key point. The proposal sets out on page 27, and those proposals mean that around 4,600 households in the district would no longer need to pay council tax. This would be achieved by increasing the council tax support scheme from 90% to 100%. These changes mean that an additional £1 million of council tax support is given to households in the district. Hundreds of pounds that will remain in the pockets of 4,600 households in our district on the lowest incomes. Now, that is something that's worth shouting about. At a time when the media devotes so much time to things like lamppost designs, let's shine a light on this policy that will have far-reaching benefits for our residents. We incur significant costs collecting council tax, particularly from households on lower incomes, because it's the most difficult to collect. Broadly speaking, the loss of council tax income resulting from this change is not significantly different from the savings we expect to make through reduced collection costs. There is, of course, more detail in the report, and this isn't the only factor to consider. It's also important to note that whilst we collect the tax, the majority of it is passed on to Kent County Council and the Fire Authority and the Police and Crime Commissioner. And those bodies, if you read the report, have objected and raised concerns about these proposals because it is likely to affect their incomes. However, I am proposing that we support the recommended option, which is backed by residents and would result in 86.4% of our customers, I don't like using the word customers, but it's in the report, our customers receiving a higher level of council tax support. Removing 4,600 households, and yes, I'm going to say that again because I think it's really important in case the media are listening to this rather than looking up lamppost designs. Removing 4,600 households from council tax, putting money directly back into people's pockets during an ongoing cost of living crisis is a significant positive step. This money can be better spent on keeping homes warm or putting food on the table, and I believe it represents a fantastic achievement that fits in well with the joint Lib Dem and Labour principles of this administration.
Absolutely.
Would any other member like to speak on this? No? Can we go directly to vote, Andrea?
That's carried unanimously, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. We're moving on to item 9. We have 3 questions for this meeting. There is an overall limit of 30 minutes for all councillors' questions. Each questionnaire will have 1 minute to put their question and 3 minutes is allowed for the response. Each questionnaire will also be allowed to ask 1 supplementary question, which the responder to the original question may answer. No other contribution is allowed. Can I invite Councillor Andrew Harvey to put their first question?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I had the pleasure before Christmas of going to the King's Hall to see the Simon and Garfunkel experience, which was a fabulous evening, and I was feeling groovy until I went to the bar to get myself a drink, and they weren't doing their best to keep this customer satisfied when they gave me a drink in a disposable plastic cup. Anyway, when I was homeward bound later on, sorry, I got to thinking, if this council has a no plastic, single plastic use policy in its properties, how come the King's Hall serves every drink in a disposable cup from the bar?
Thank you. Can I invite Councillor Mill Dawkins as Cabinet Member for Environmental and Climate Change to make a response?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed the gig. The policy is that we don't use single-use plastic cups at the King's Hall. They use Veggyware cups that are compostable. Reusable polycarbonated cups are used whenever possible for small events. Those are ones that you can wash up. But on bigger events, they will use these Veggyware cups, and that is the policy. And I believe that we answered that question last year as well. So they do require industrial composting, but because we haven't got a facility nearby to be able to do that, they go to the incinerator. It would actually be a bigger carbon footprint to take them to the compost facility. So, but the studies on that show that Veggyware show that their PLA bioplastic produces more heat than newspaper, wood or food waste, and it also produces no volatile gases and leaves little residue. So actually significantly better alternative than traditional single-use plastic. So I'm sure you've got supplementary, so I'll wait to hear what your supplementary is.
Yeah, thank you very much for that response. Yeah, the Veggyware plastic cups, which we did use here, I probably shouldn't call them plastic, but they are actually manufactured in Taiwan. So the carbon footprint is not only the manufacture there, but it's 6,000 miles transported to Scotland, where they're then redistributed from Edinburgh, redistributed on diesel trucks down to here. And then, of course, they go in another diesel truck to Addisham to be burnt, which is, you know, that's a pretty high carbon footprint. I'd say just use glass. But I'm actually talking of those, I'm very pleased to see that when I asked that question before, there were 12 councillors using the disposable cups in here, and I don't see any of them tonight. So that's the green voice in the room has achieved something there, I think. So thank you for that. But my supplementary question, Doris to Manuel, is why does the concession in the King's Hall, the cafe, serve every single bit of food or drink on disposable tableware when it's an internal space? I know it's run by a concession, it's not run by ourselves, but it's still council-owned property, and it's pretty shocking that they throw away everything after it's used. Thank you.
Okay, so I can't answer that question directly right now because I haven't got inside knowledge of the cafe at the King's Hall and what they're using, but I would have hoped their policy, it should be their policy that they aren't using disposable stuff, it should all be recyclable. What I would like to say though is that you do bring these questions to council, which is great. It would be really, really handy if you are concerned about this sort of stuff to get in touch with me and the officers, you know, so if they aren't, if we're not aligning with the policies that we're setting out, then we need to know that so that we can act upon it. So you can use the normal channels. I think you can find my email address on the website. And also if you go on to your email, then it should just come up as well, mail.dawkins@councillor.canterbury.gov.uk. And then I'll be able to get all the officers involved and we can make sure that this isn't happening because we do have quite a strict policy on this sort of stuff for our own estate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I invite Councillor Peter Campbell to put their first question?
Thank you. After Councillor Harvey, you probably prefer the sound of silence, but it's me, I'm afraid. At the council meeting of the 30th of October 2025, the Cabinet Member for Housing stated that the draft local plan demonstrates that we want to do all we can to build on brownfield sites before we turn our attention to development elsewhere, a position fully supported by Green councillors. Policy C19, Wind Cheap Commercial Area, in the draft local plan provides for approximately 1,000 new dwellings, including affordable housing, older persons housing, accessible housing, self-building housing, and appropriate housing mix. This development offers an ideal opportunity to provide much-needed high-density housing of the right type, the right size, and the right design, close to the city centre and close to transport links. The current forecast is for delivery of this policy between 2033 and 2042, with the bulk being delivered over a decade away. In the next 2 years leading up to the local government reorganisation, it is anticipated that the feasibility will be completed, but no material progress will be made, and it will be for the new unitary authority to deliver this policy. So my question is, given the hugely positive deliverables across all sectors, can resources be allocated to accelerate policy C19 as a priority over the development of greenfield sites? This will include the commencement of community and key stakeholder engagement, plus work on developing the supplementary planning design, which should aim to be complete or substantially advanced by the time of the LGR vesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I invite Councillor Alan Baldock as leader to make their response?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Pip's right. With our encouragement, officers have worked really hard to maximise the number of brownfield sites that are included in our draft local plan. Proud of that. As we prepared for a very different local plan that wanted to maximise available brownfield developments, we reached out again for the owners of brownfield sites to come forward. Our success means that around 50 brownfield and mixed sites will be allocated in the draft local plan, compared to just 27 sites in the 2017 Conservative local plan. This administration can look forward to seeing that almost a quarter of our housing supply identified in the emerging local plan coming from brownfield sites. A huge step forward compared to the previous plans, which of course is not being reflected in the Greens' comment, in the Green Party's comment. Windcheap is part of that mix and offers us a great brownfield opportunity for all reasons outlined in your question. Thank you for that. Having said that, brownfield sites, particularly large complex sites like Windcheap, are hard to come by and take a lot longer to prepare for development compared to greenfield sites. We have to learn to be patient and take responsibility for the long-term outcomes of the people that we represent and not just look for the next election. They can also be very challenging sites to build on and very complicated when it comes to making the finances stack up. The local plan is still in the draft form and we're still analysing the feedback from the public and others following the recent consultation. I would not preempt that consultation. Plus, the draft plan has several other challenges to overcome, including a consultation on the final draft plan in March on the Reg 19, and then the examination in public overseen by the government-appointed planning inspector at the end of the year. It's too soon to comment or commit resources, as you suggest, now, but we will keep that under constant review, and it has always been our intention to prioritise strategic sites following the adoption of the plan in any case. If development opportunities in Windcheap arise in the meantime, we'll do our very best to progress them. On a lighter note, however, it's great news that the Green Party councillor is now proposing to support our efforts to create family homes, including affordable and social rent ones. Support for the Green councillors and affordable homes is not something that we have ever seen in this council. Indeed, support for building any homes is not having much support. I have a renewed optimism at this moment in time that maybe we could now look forward to the Green Party support in the draft local plan Reg 19 next month in March. And sorry, Councillor Campbell, Windcheap is not a magic wand, and we can wave to save the greenfield land, and we cannot avoid allocating that in the draft local plan. To imply otherwise would be completely misleading. It's another political cruelty to be inflicted. We all need to be open and honest to the public. This Labour-led administration will be and will not shrink from its responsibilities it has to its residents. Our focus is to be on a pragmatic and deliverable development option that creates homes for families that is undeniably in need of such things and security that those homes bring. Windcheap is one of those options on that list. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell, do you have any supplementary questions?
Yeah. Thank you, Alan. I think the point I was asking was the opportunity to bring work forward. I recognise the strength of policy C19 and the work that's been done to introduce brownfield sites, and I congratulate the council on that. However, I think the opportunity to bring these works forward is important for two reasons. One is any subsequent organisation, unitary authority may not have the same level of enthusiasm that the current administration do.
Sorry, do you have any questions?
And so the question is is can we at least investigate the opportunity to bring these works forward?
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Simple answer to that. If a developer comes forward and wishes to take forward plans for Windsheep, even before the draft local plan is approved, of course they can do, and we will be sympathetic to that, and that's absolutely fine. But at this moment in time, I don't see a developer. And on your bit about the building of that out is really dependent on the developer being approved or taking that forward, really. That's probably the answer to your question, actually.
Thank you. Can I invite Councillor Dan Walkins to put their first question?
Good evening, Lord Mayor. We know that a contract has recently been signed between the Council and Canenco for the waste collection and street cleaning services. However, there are other Canenco services for ground maintenance and for public toilets which were not included in the new contract. Given that these services are just as important to residents, why have they been excluded and what is the plan in this regard going forward?
Thank you. Can I invite Councillor Charlotte Connell as Cabinet Member for Council Services, Culture and Heritage to make their response?
It honestly wouldn't be full council without a classic Canenco contract question. So I do welcome the question, as I always do, from Dan. I know it could be next time, maybe. There are three separate contracts, as you rightly say, between the council and Canenco. The waste collection service, which includes street cleansing, the grounds maintenance contract, and the public convenience, the toilets contract. And I agree, these are all very important services, frontline services for all of our residents. The contract relating to the collection and recycling of waste and street cleansing was indeed signed, as you say, on the 30th of October 2025, in accordance with an officer decision of the same date. The grounds maintenance and associated works contract started with a letter of intent, you may remember, dated 26th of November 2021, in accordance with an officer decision notice dated a few months prior. The final contract was also signed at the end of October 2025. Regarding the public toilets, the contract with Monitor Services was varied following an unsuccessful procurement process in April 2024. A variation agreement was entered into between the Council and Monitor Services to extend its contract to continue to provide from 2024 to June 2024, when the service was transferred to Canenco. The service with Canenco and the staff transfer of that particular contract started in June, on the 22nd of June 2024. At the time the variation agreement was entered into, the terms and specification of the contract with Canenco were still being finalised. This has now completed, and the agreement which is about to be formalised and signed.
Do you have any supplementary question?
Yes, thank you for the update. It's good to get them here. We do, of course, attempt to get updates between council meetings, as most organisations do, because it's efficient to communicate more often than once every 2.5 months. But you know, sometimes we don't get the responses we look for in their entirety. So please forgive me. I am really pleased to hear that the contract has been done for one of those outstanding services and is on its way for the other. Obviously, I'm going to ask the question, can we see them when they're done? Because it's been very useful reviewing the grounds maintenance, reviewing the waste collection one. And related to that, is the forward plan entry on this item, which came out late December, relating to these services, but says nothing else about them. Can I ask what that is about? It's obviously going to Cabinet, but there's no description of what that is. And I did ask that. But
sorry, that supplementary question was so long-winded. I actually didn't catch what you said at all. Can you repeat the supplementary question?
Firstly, will you send us the ground maintenance contract which is concluded, and when it is concluded, the toilet one as well? And also, can you explain what is on the forward plan that relates to this? It's simply along the lines of there's an item to do with these services, but it doesn't explain what it is, but it's obviously going to Cabinet and there's no backup.
No. Again, this would be most useful. There were actually two supplementary questions in there and you only are allowed one. So the first one was on grounds maintenance. I'll email you.
Well, I will be pleased to receive one. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we move now to item 10? We have two motions to consider this evening. We'll make them in order as they appear in the agenda. The first motion reads, taking children's rights-based approach to tackling homelessness. This motion can be debated this evening, and I would like to invite Councillor Rachel Carnac to propose the motion as set out in the agenda.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, this is a motion that asks us to take a children's rights-based approach to tackling homelessness. It recognises that temporary accommodation is a major problem for children, with 50% of all people living in temporary accommodation in England and Wales being children, and recognises that this has a negative impact on a child's development, education and health. We absolutely acknowledge that Canterbury City Council has taken many steps already to take greater care of children in TA, and this motion is absolutely not about a criticism of our council, but what it's asking is that when it starts to review its homelessness strategy and its temporary accommodation placement policy during this year, that the voice of the child is woven throughout and amplified. Particularly as we move towards some form of unitary, where we are able to join up homelessness, education and social care, it's even more important that we are thinking about these bigger issues now and embedding the policy that will support our district's residents in years to come. The latest data for our district shows that there are 170 households in temporary accommodation. This is as of middle of December, so it could have changed a little bit, of which 50 are families with 108 children between them. I think you'll all agree that's a large number of children. This motion asks that as a council we put children's rights at the heart of our policy, and we also call on national government to ensure it also prioritises this and legislates to allow councils to provide greater support. I think as a council we should welcome the new legal duty on councils to ensure they notify schools, GPs and health visitors when a child's family is made homeless and placed in temporary accommodation, and which should be included in the forthcoming government's child poverty and homelessness strategies legislation. That aims to ensure no child is left without support, and that health, education and councils deliver a more joined-up approach to support children experiencing homelessness. We also ask that the victims of domestic abuse are not excluded from bidding on social housing if they have accrued household debt as a result of economic abuse, and that there is a greater degree of discretion when councils make these decisions. Already, actually, our council is very good at doing that, but it would be good to see that embedded in policy. So I ask that this council resolves that the leader writes to the Secretary of State for Education and MHCLG to express our support for the new legal duty on councils to ensure they notify schools, GPs and health visitors. And you'll note that I'm asking us to support on this occasion, not to criticise, because it is good policy, and for when a child's family is made homeless and placed in temporary accommodation, and that this is not watered down as the children's wellbeing and schools bill progresses through both houses, and that Canterbury City Council develops a child-centred policy for temporary accommodation and reviews procedures to ensure that the rights of children are always treated equally with those of adults, which includes that there is recognition of postnatal support following hospital discharge, that there is better data collection and sharing to improve the educational, health and development outcomes for all children in temporary accommodation, and so that families are not lost in the system when placed in out-of-area accommodation, and that all children under 18 months of age have a cot to sleep in when in temporary accommodation. Another thing that our council does make sure that it tries to do in all cases. I just very quickly beg your allowance, Lord Mayor. I would like to thank the Shared Health Foundation for their support in putting this motion together, and I also recommend for anyone who wants to read more that they read The Debt Trap Nation by Catherine Brickell and Mel Novicki, or at least look at it. And I would also like to thank senior council officers who've supported me in writing this motion. And I'd like to just finish by saying one of them summed it up by saying, in our district, we want children to thrive, not just survive. So I hope you will support this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Councillor Lise Harvey to second the motion and also to indicate whether you want to speak now or at the end of the debate prior to Councillor Carnack's summing up.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, I would like to second this motion. And can I speak at the end of the debate, please?
Okay, thank you very much. So we would like to invite Council to debate this matter, after which a recorded vote will be taken on the resolution. I can see that Councillor Pip Hazelton's hand's up. Would you like to go ahead?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I welcome any motion that shines the light on homelessness and the need to prioritise the rights of children. Children are indeed our future. The key causes of homelessness are poverty on the one hand and a limited supply of suitable, affordable housing on the other. In 2024, the Labour government inherited not only a cost of living crisis, but a housing crisis as well. House building numbers had slumped, more social housing was being lost to right to buy than replaced, and the private rented sector was weighted heavily in favour of the landlord, rendering many vulnerable to unaffordable rent increases and summary termination of their tenancies. This has left many families unable to settle, plan for their children's education, or put down roots in their communities. In addition, the Conservative decision to cut Labour's Sure Start centres from 2010 is a stark reminder of the vandalism of Osborne's austerity agenda. The same government that oversaw erosion of services when previously hundreds of thousands of children had been lifted out of poverty during the Blair-Brown years. Our current Labour government has set about a decade of renewal, which naturally has children's welfare and opportunity at its heart. By boosting family income and driving down the cost of essentials, we are again lifting children out of poverty, including free school meals for infants, breakfast clubs so no child starts their day hungry, cutting the cost of school uniforms, increasing the national living wage, a £1 billion crisis and resilience fund, 30 hours of government-funded childcare from 9 months in age, and lifting the 2-child benefit cap from April. We've also taken significant steps to address the homelessness crisis, particularly in relation to children, investing £3.4 billion in homelessness and rough sleeping services over the next 3 years, building 1.5 million new homes and reforming planning to ensure a sustainable housing supply, strengthening renters' rights and the abolition of Section 21 evictions. Locally, the situation is serious, but is improving, with fewer families in temporary accommodation at the end of 25 than was the case 12 months earlier. I'm pleased to be able to report that we currently have no families in bed and breakfast, and only 18 are having to be placed out of area, although I do accept that that's 18 families too many. Our temporary accommodation policy, as Councillor Carnack indicated, is being refreshed and will be out for consultation soon. Also, one of our officers attends the Kent Housing Officers Group, and a joined-up approach to the children's needs as we move to unitary authorities is on that group's agenda. Cots are supplied by the landlords we use, but I am asking officers to look into whether reuse of mattresses is indicated in terms of health. We're waiting for NHS advice on that. We're also, finally, we're working towards domestic abuse housing accreditation, DAHA, which we expect to achieve this year, and I'm very happy to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harry Mackenzie.
Okay, thank you, Lord Mayor. And thank you for bringing this motion forward this evening. As a ward councillor, as I'm sure we all have, I've done my best to assist families who have been facing the risk of homelessness before. And, you know, these are not interactions that you forget ever. people in these situations are genuinely afraid, not just for themselves. When I speak to these residents, it's always their children that they bring up in the conversations that we have. It's never themselves, and it's always points about how their children will get to school, how their EHCPs will be interrupted, how their social lives will be interrupted, and the impacts that will be on their development. So I do think this is a really, really essential motion to bring forward. So thank you for that. I happen to have read a publication by Shelter a couple of weeks ago, and it's really timely that I did that just before this motion came forward, because I want to share with you some stuff that I learned from reading it that I think supports your motion really well. With the data sharing that you're calling for in your motion, it would allow for schools to be able to track the attendance of pupils in temporary accommodation, provide catch-up lessons for them, and provide pastoral support, which is especially important when 91% of teachers report children in temporary accommodation coming to school tired and 86% not coming to school at all. It would allow GPs and health visitors to more closely monitor the developmental milestones of children, schedule home visits and extra checkups to ensure they're not falling through the cracks, which is especially important when 2/3 of people report having degrading physical and mental health in temporary accommodation, and between 2019 and 2023, 55 children unfortunately died across the country due to poor conditions in temporary accommodation. I think it's really important that this has come forward today. I support these proposals to strengthen our data collection and sharing mechanisms, and to write to the government to support and demand assurance of the legal duties on councils to notify all relevant service providers of homelessness. Indeed, as Councillor Pip Hazelton said, our government has done incredible things so far to lift children out of poverty and tackle homelessness, from lifting the malicious 2-child benefit cap to outlawing no-fault evictions. And we must be prepared to provide local feedback and support to keep moving in that direction. And I'm glad that we can see unity and cross-party support this evening. Thank you.
Councillor Forrester.
Thank you. I too was really happy to see this motion in the pack for tonight, because as some of you will know, I moved to Canterbury, what feels like an incredibly long time ago, now I find myself here, to work in child protection, working alongside social workers across East Kent to protect some of our most vulnerable children. And indeed, most of my working life has been to improve the lives of children and young people. I then also recently joined with Councillor Carnac the Cabinet Advisory Committee on Housing. So this motion falls squarely in my interest areas. It's great to see councillors across the council supporting this motion and wanting to improve children's lives regardless of their background. And it's even more heartening to see all those same councillors wanting to build on the work already being undertaken by our Labour government, much listed by Councillor Hazelton. In the same legislation cited in this motion, the government is already banning local authorities from unlawfully placing children in bed and breakfast accommodation for more than 6 weeks. And it's also backing this up with £8 million investment over 3 years. Although I'm pleased to say that's not an issue in this district. Not only that, but this motion also notes the importance of postnatal support after discharge. I would add that's for parents as well as the child. This is a cause of particular interest to me, and I know some fellow councillors. And again, it's great to know that those bringing the motion are aligned with our government on the importance of this issue, with the National Maternity and Neonatal Task Force now established, following the Amos investigation last year, and of course, the Kirkup report here in East Kent that many of us will be aware of. But temporary accommodation is important and unfortunately sometimes necessary, even life-saving. But it's only with, as Councillor Carnac said, joined-up services that residents can receive the best provision and best outcomes, especially those who are not able to advocate effectively for themselves, such as children and young people. And indeed, this might be a benefit of future unitary authorities. So this is a great motion. I'm really pleased to be here supporting it today. I'm sure that Councillor Baldock will be happy to write to the Secretaries of State. And most of all, I'm pleased that after 14 years of austerity, the rolling back of early intervention services, Sure Start and youth centres, and the introduction of the 2-child benefit cap, now of course being removed. And with the estimate that the current government policies, the current Labour government policies will lift more than 500,000 children out of poverty. We are now, in this room, it seems, all aligned on the importance of child-centred policy making. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor David Thomas.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Mine's more of a comment on Unitary that's coming forward. It's something that's popped in my head and it's not really to do with this motion, so I do apologise in advance. But it's just made me think that when we go to Unitary, because we've got a bigger area, does that mean families have been moved into bigger areas? So, and I'm just saying it that at the moment, where if someone's in Herne Bay, they stay in Herne Bay, Canterbury, and they stay in that area. When we go to bigger, it's just a thought that people could be moved further away. And it's just popped in my head, and I'm putting it out there in the public domain. Thank you, Chair. Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just to say that's for a consideration later on in the process when we know what the geography of the new unitary is, and we'll be providing information at a later date.
Councillor Andrew Harvey.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just to agree with what the others have said here, really, and I think it's important, and I'm sure most councillors will agree that a vast proportion of our casework is to deal with housing issues. And as Councillor Mackenzie says, some of the stories we come up against are really quite distressing and hard to deal with. So anything we can do that will help for the children who suffer the fallout of these issues can only be supported, and I support this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Nolan.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. If I could just draw our attention back to the motion, and I'd like to thank Councillor Carnac for writing out explicit steps for us to take. And I would like to ask the Leader, because I do support the fact that it would be useful for the Leader of the Council to write to the Secretary of State for Education. We're not in the unitary at the moment, so we don't have that kind of power. We don't have power and leverage in the health service. So, yes, I would actually support that positive step. Also looking at the very positive steps that Councillor Carnac has said. Again, I think we're all in agreement that a child-centred policy for temporary accommodation and review of the procedure to ensure the rights of children are always treated equally is something that we all agree with. And I can only say that to have to put into writing that children under the age of 18 months should have a cot to sleep in and not the implication is share a bed with the parents is only something that we can all agree with. And I just want to add to that there is a head of a primary school in my ward who had to apply for money from their sort of hardship fund to buy mattresses for some children in a family. Not that they were in temporary accommodation, but they were in private accommodation, but there wasn't enough beds for the children. And I just think, yeah, every child should thrive, not survive. So thank you, Councillor Carnac, for bringing this to our attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brady.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I support this motion. When this motion talks about the benefits and advantages of co-working between departments under a East Kent Unitary Council, it is refreshing to hear the focus on children and young people. With my other hat on, for far too long, I've been challenging cuts to children's services at KCC made by the previous Conservative administration and continually insisted on children and young people's voices being the golden thread running through decision making. But unfortunately, we saw cuts to commission youth services, closures to youth and children's centres, and a changing from service delivery, which was universal, to referral only. So it is really welcome to hear the new approach from the proposers. I only wished that their colleagues at County Hall had that view, because we wouldn't now be seeing the negative impacts the cuts are having on families and children in our district. And that's the positive difference that we've got with this council, Lord Mayor. A motion is proposed and the administration works with the proposers to deliver the motion's objectives. I'd like to commend Councillor Hazelton for this positive approach. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much. I would like to invite Councillor Lise Harvey to speak at this moment.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I support this motion. Homelessness is often discussed in terms of housing supply budgets or adult services, but when children are involved, this is not just a housing issue, it's a children's rights issue. Every child has the right to a safe home, to health, to education and to protection from harm, yet children experiencing homelessness face disrupted schooling, poor physical and mental health and long-term trauma that can follow them into adulthood. If we fail to act early, we are not only letting children down today, we are storing up deeper social problems for tomorrow. A children rights-based approach means putting children at the centre of policy and decision-making. It means asking at every stage what is in the best interest of the child. It means ensuring stable accommodation, access to education, mental health support and safeguarding, not as optional extras, but as fundamental rights. This approach is also preventative. When we protect children from the damaging effects of homelessness early on, we reduce future demand on health services, social care and the criminal justice system. In other words, it is not only the right thing to do, it's a smart thing to do. Crucially, a rights-based approach recognises that homelessness is not a personal failure of families or children, but a systematic failure that requires coordinated, compassionate solutions. If we truly believe in fairness, opportunity and the well-being of future generations, then we must start by protecting those with the least power to protect themselves. For those reasons, I strongly support this motion. And just very quickly, I'd like to give you a quick example of homelessness in children through a resident of mine. But first of all, I'd like to quickly thank the officers and KCC involved in this dreadful situation because they really did work hard on it. 10-year-old boy, extremely autistic, cannot travel in any vehicle whatsoever. If he does, he fits and needs paramedic attendance. The parent was removed from the parent removed the child from the spouse as they were using drugs and really being quite violent. This child and parent was placed in a hostile situation, but constantly being in the company of unsavoury characters, let's say, drug users, and also they were nowhere near their school, which meant miles of walking every day. This situation was resolved after many months, and he was moved into an amazing house with his parent. And the most incredible thing was his assisted dog was returned to him because the dog wasn't allowed in the hostel. But my fear is the trauma of this phase in this young life might last a lifetime. And I just think that I know you guys do a great job and you do try. And that is seriously why I support this motion and think we've got to do as much as we can. And as councillors, as you say, it keeps you up at night, some of the things you have to go and see. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Can I invite Councillor Carnock to sum up, please?
Yeah, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Well, I'd like to thank you all for your support. I deliberately didn't want to make this a political ping pong in any way, because I think, as Councillor Brady said, it's an opportunity for us to show as our council how we come together cross-party and we can influence good policy. And I look forward to seeing how those policies are developed and updated this year. This is something that really reflects my strongly held views that children should be heard and not silenced, and that our role is to develop robust policy that benefits all our residents, whatever their age, and that we should also translate powerful movements like the White Ribbon motion that we had last year into practical and positive policy frameworks. And I think one of the big issues with this is actually mothers fleeing domestic abuse with their children, and that they're not trapped long-term in temporary accommodation through no fault of their own. And just finally, very quickly, obviously I submitted this motion before the Christmas holidays, but over Christmas I read Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver, and I think any of you who've read that book will identify with how much we all politically, whatever our parties are doing now, whatever government's doing, as individuals we still have to fight more and more, because David Copperfield came through Canterbury, and Demon Copperhead is based on modern translation into Virginia of what we saw in Victorian times in the treatment of children, and we need to really work hard so that we don't fall back into those traps, such as, yes, children sharing beds, not having new mattresses, and that we all individually do our utmost. So thank you all for your support this evening. I really welcome it. It's very heartwarming. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Andrea, can we take a recorded vote?
That's carried unanimously.
Thank you. We'll now move on to our second motion, which is full council discussion on community governance review. Now, the motion on discussion of community governance review, I would like to invite Councillor Claire Tomble to propose the motion as set out in the agenda.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So I think I'm right in thinking that Councillor Cornell earlier announced that the Cabinet does now intend to carry out a community governance review. Can I just check that is the case? Because it would have been really good to have known that before this evening. We've obviously put quite a lot of preparation into what we were going to do, and it would have done it slightly differently had I known.
Just to
that
be
it's gonna
really
a-
clear, the decision's not made until we make it a cabinet.
I see. Okay, I shall carry on.
So
then.
we are
Thanks.
minded to it as the words that Councillor Cornell, which is significantly different to have made the decision now. We haven't. We will make it a cabinet. Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you. Okay, so the decision isn't made. I shall carry on. At a recent LGA webinar I attended about local government reorganisation in Surrey, the leader of Reigate and Banstead Council said of the community governance review being carried out in his district, it is important to go through this process to make sure residents feel any democratic deficit is addressed. As a Whitstable councillor, I'm particularly concerned about the democratic deficit implicit in the current LGR plans for residents in my unparished ward. The city of Canterbury and Herne Bay Town and other areas are also in this position. Unparished areas will be effectively at a disadvantage compared to the parished areas of the district in terms of local representation. In an East Kent unitary authority along the lines of those proposed recently, our towns and city will likely be the only ones of their size without their own local council. While I am sure that any future unitary councillors would be hardworking and dedicated to representation, they will have a much wider remit than we do here and more residents to represent and support. The centre of decision-making will likely be further away from our towns. It is inevitable that the new councillors will not be able to provide the locally informed and personally accessible approach that we currently can. In addition, our wards will be more vulnerable to decisions being made without good local representation unless we have a mandated body which can speak up for our town. While local neighbourhood area committees are being touted as a solution, these would have no statutory power and would comprise mainly unelected representatives of local groups which have no mandate for wider representation. All parished areas, however, will have parish representation, putting those unparished areas at a disadvantage. The Cabinet will be meeting to consider an evaluation of community governance review and alternative options on Monday the 19th of January. To inform their discussions and to show our residents that we are all fully considering the impact reorganisation will have at local level, this matter needs first to be discussed openly by the whole Council. Councillors across the political spectrum do have views on this matter. To this end, this motion asks Council to resolve this evening that, to inform Cabinet's discussions and to show our residents that we are fully considering the impact reorganisation will have at local level, this Council will hold a free and open debate this evening so that all councillors can share their views on a district-wide CGR of all unparished areas.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Councillor Rachel Carnac to second the motion.
Yes, seconded, Lord Mayor. And I think I'm just going to ask as well if we can support having this debate this evening so that backbenchers are able to inform Cabinet before your meeting of our views. I think normally it appeared on the forward plan, and I think normally it would have gone to overview for pre-decision scrutiny, but given obviously the time, the deadlines and everything, that hasn't happened. So I think this is a really good opportunity this evening, if we can, to allow us to debate that. And otherwise, it's not a threat, but you face 20 odd of us turning up to the cabinet meeting and each speaking for 3 minutes. So it's probably you might prefer us to do it this evening rather than at cabinet. So that's so if I can just ask for that. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Baldock.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I thank Councillor Carnac. I'll just clear that point up of why we do what we do tonight. We welcome this debate. I think it's absolutely fine by us, and we use the ways and means of our democratic process to ensure that's the case. Cabinet tonight will be predominantly listening, and that's why Councillor Cornell made those statements earlier on, which sets, I think, very clearly the parameters. But also, I think we're honest, the bits that we struggle with, because this is a massive piece of work. 70,000 people. Many of the throwaway comments that are used, like, oh, we're doing it in our area. It's for a couple of wards or a small centre of somewhere. This is not, this is big. This is probably one of the biggest community governance reviews around. So we need to be right. We need to get it right. We are minded towards it, but we've not made our mind up. We can't make our mind up. This is not a decision making tonight. So no need to panic, Councillor. We are on board with that. So, so no need to panic, Councillor Turnbull. We are on board with it, but you know we need to make a decision in the proper way, and that is through Cabinet. So yes. So tonight, Cabinet be listening. We want your views, but mainly we want to hear how you think we should be doing this. If we're minded to do it, how do we do it? And those are the things that Councillor Cornell pointed out. And those are the things we really, really are working for and really struggling with. Thank you. Right.
Okay, so this motion is rather unusual in that the resolution is to hold an open discussion this evening on community governance review so that all councillors can share their views before Cabinet meets later this month. So I would therefore like to seek an agreement by general assent to have that discussion now. Do you have an agreement? Thank you. I therefore now invite councillors to share their views on the motion, and all councillors may speak once for 3 minutes here, and will be no further proposals, amendments, or summing up, as this is simply an opportunity to share views at this stage in the process. Councillor Brady.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It does look like there's a few tired legs on that side of the chamber, Lord Mayor, from councillors clambering to jump on the bandwagon. Welcome on board for joining in the conversation. For quite a while now, many members of this council have been listening to residents in our wards and recently joined a number of community events on this topic. And I thank, as always, the residents who have spearheaded the debate. That aside, I recognise the points made in the paper because they've been really eloquently made by residents on several occasions. If Cabinet decides on a review, I would like the scope to be quite broad. So I've listed a couple of areas which I'd like Cabinet to possibly focus on. Have an investigation into what decision-making powers and responsibilities a town council could and should have. A detailed analysis on what amount of precept there may be and whether there would be an increase to the council tax due to the change. Whether parishes could be amalgamated, how much councillors, both parish and town councillors, should be compensated for undertaking their roles, naturally where the boundaries could be, and what co-working should look like between a new lower tier council and the new unitary. So a broader look at newly formed unitary councils to investigate best practices, as well as how community forums, which are underwritten in the white paper, could be working within this new structure. So from hearing what Councillor Cornell mentioned earlier, I've got every confidence that Cabinet will take these comments on board. And from the leader, I think it clearly shows that the Cabinet is listening to residents' voices. And again, I welcome that approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Smith and then Councillor Bland. Councillor Naomi Smith.
Chair, thank you. I speak as a Whitstable councillor who sat on the last working group for community governance review, where we looked at the possibility of a town council for Whitstable. From that process, it was clear that there was very little enthusiasm from residents for creating a new council. I note that the mover of this motion was also in that group, yet the motion seems to overlook that we actually heard from the community. This should remind us that any discussions of parishing must be grounded in real engagement and the views of residents, not just theoretical assumptions about democratic deficits. Here in Canterbury District, the evidence shows why we need to be careful. At the last parish council elections, there were around 217 councillor seats across the district. Approximately 205 of those seats were filled unopposed. No contest, no ballot, no choice for residents. This is not a marginal issue. It is the system as it currently operates. When the vast majority of councillors are elected unopposed, we must ask ourselves how much democratic mandate is actually being delivered. Too often parish councils become closed circles, not because those individuals lack commitment, because the structure itself fails to attract broad participation. In practice, this can risk replacing one democratic deficit with another. We should be clear that much of the push for universal parishing comes from self-selecting pressure groups, not from broad, district-wide demand. Loud voices are not the same as representative voices. If we look beyond Kent, the experience of Wales, which has had unitary authorities now for 30 years in 2026, is instructive. The Welsh Government has identified a democratic health problem at parish council level. Very high levels of uncontested seats, low public engagement, and councils that many residents do not feel represent them. That should give us pause before assuming that simply creating more parish town councils automatically strengthens local democracy. So yes, let's consider a community governance review, but it must not start from the conclusion that parishing is the answer. A serious CGR should be an opportunity to reimagine how we hear from our communities, to reach people who are currently absent from local decision-making, younger residents, working families, renters, and those that feel that local government is simply not for them. If we get this right, we can design ways of listening that are genuinely representative, not dominated by the few, and give our communities a voice that is both credible and trusted. I thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bland.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The fact that I'm speaking as a Labour backbencher freely and openly seems to indicate that the motion has been accepted as it has been in general assent. But what I'd say about this particular motion and the wording of it is I find it somewhat confusing in very clear ways. I mean, it talks about a democratic deficit as if an elected councillor to a unitary authority was not somehow a democratically elected local councillor for the ward that they're going to be in. Now, that seems to me to be a bit of a slight, both on existing Kent County councillors who actually work for bigger areas, and to my knowledge, as far as I know, Kent County councillors, generally speaking, have very good relationships with their whole local community. So where is this democratic deficit? It's not a lack of democratic representation, because we'll be electing new councillors. And let's not forget that they will still be people representing local people and in contact with them. But there is I agree, an issue about areas where there isn't a town council or areas in rural areas that are not parished. Now, this current debate is not actually going to deal with all of that. I represent a rural ward which is actually on the boundaries of other authorities, some of which may or may not be in a new unitary authority. Now, the parish councillors that I speak to on the edges of our district, etc., are interested in amalgamation possibly across existing district boundaries. Now, this motion will not actually enable that to happen. In fact, what this council does now will not enable that kind of discussion or whatever to happen. An amalgamation of parish councils across district boundaries is inevitably going to have to be something that's undertaken by new unitary authorities once they're actually in place. So let's not imagine that just by putting in some town councils and a few other rural councils within this district, we will be dealing with all the issues that are raised by this, because we won't be. And it is important that you don't forget the far-flung bits of the of our rural districts. So I'd like to say that as a very strong thing. In terms of how you go about this, it seems to me it's a huge area, as Councillor Baldock seems to be implying. It's a huge area to do a huge community governance review on. And if you were to include cross-district boundaries as well, it's an even bigger area. So what I'd say is, whatever the Cabinet does, what they need to do is come up with a solution about community governance reviews, which is actually based on a rolling programme. You start with a number of community governance reviews that are on a rolling programme, because that's the only way we'll actually be able to get the work done.
Thank you. Councillor Prentice?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yeah, we face a pretty significant change in the way our district is governed, and I've always maintained the view that the question of town councils or larger parish councils or other structures is something that does need to be addressed to coincide with the formation of a unitary authority. It's probably right that our city council does take that opportunity now to look at this question, looking back at the Whitstable Town Council campaign and looking at the lessons honestly from that experience, because it does take time to build the case for putting in something new, a new structure, and to build awareness of it, and to make the case for why it's important, if you think it is important. And it's got to be a collaborative process, bottom up and top down. What might a town council boundary look like? I've yet to see much evidence or much in the way of proposals about what those boundaries might look like. And I think this is where we start to ask people for their suggestions. How might those boundaries interact with the institutions we already have, like the Lord Mayor and Sheriff, that I know are protected by Royal Charter? But these are the details that actually people will be looking at, I think, over time. How are a town council's institutions, how are they existing for in the general structure of things? Do they exist for the sake of having institutions, or do they have purpose? And people do want to see purpose, particularly in this era of a cost of living crisis. Do they, do we, I think this is a healthy debate to be having right now, and there's no better place to be having it in this chamber. And by and large, I think it's a good debate to be having with our civic societies who do seem well engaged with it. But we need to be mindful that we must bring people with us along the way, not just the most engaged people, but people who actually may have more of a passing interest in the affairs of our local democracy. I wish people have more interest in our local democracy, but it's not always the case because people have busy lives. People quite reasonably ask, you know, what's in it for me? How will the town or parish I live in be improved by this change to our democracy? And finally, I think, you know, put ourselves in the shoes of a future town or parish councillor, whether that's under a new structure or not. quote the old Tony Benn arguments, if you like. What power have you got? Where did you get it from? Whose interest do you use it? Who are you accountable to? How do we get rid of you? And I think the answers to questions like that do need to be posed, quite seriously, quite honestly, by a community governance review. Let's be clear about what our many and diverse communities want to see and be prepared to pay for as well. I don't have all the answers. I'm not going to pretend that I do. But I'd like to see a broad-based campaign, not just from this room, but from out there in the community about what people want to see. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Saul and then Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. In the 2023 Liberal Democrat manifesto for this district, we made a promise. We said we will consult on town councils for Whitstable, Herne Bay and Canterbury, especially important if local government reform brings in unitary authorities, which it has. So, unitary councils are now firmly on the horizon, so I very much welcome the leader's earlier comments on this and Councillor Cornell's comments tonight about a community governance review. And I welcome the motion being brought forward by the Conservative and Green groups on this. It is very refreshing, if not uplifting, to see everybody united around a Liberal Democrat idea. At the height of Liberal Democrat policies, it's a simple belief that decisions are best made as close to people as they affect as possible. And whatever our political parties, I think we would all agree with that principle. With the move to unitary councils, there is a risk that the currently unparished areas of our district could become democratically disadvantaged compared to where they are now, and that should concern all of us. Unlike area committees, town and parish councils are the most local level of democracy we have. They're rooted in place, they're run by people who know their communities, understand local challenges and care deeply about their future. And when they work well, they give residents a real meaningful voice. I've served on 3 parish councils and I work closely with 16 across my county and city council roles. I know how they work and what good work they do. A community governance review gives us a chance to think carefully and collectively about how decisions that affect neighbourhoods, green spaces, community facilities and local priorities will be made after local government reorganisation in Kent. But we do need to be honest and realise that this is not a simple or small exercise. On a practical level, it's going to require significant staff time, particularly from democratic services and communication teams at an already busy time. And it will cost money. But thanks to the prudent and sensible financial approach taken by this administration, cost will not be an excuse for not doing this properly. But there are a lot of questions that need to be answered. What will the scope of the review be? What questions will residents be asked? And will they actually make sense to those outside of this chamber? How do we provide information that is both meaningful, informative, but not overwhelming? Are we only considering 3 town councils? Could we look at existing parish councils that might expand into urban areas? Might places like Tankerton, Seasalt or Wincheap have their own parish councils rather than be part of town councils? How do we assess the consultation responses? And ultimately, what level of support will be enough for this to happen? How do we set boundaries that still make sense once future housing is built? And what roles might those town and parish councils realistically take? Ultimately, though, despite my great support for town and parish councils, this is a decision that belongs with residents. And I genuinely welcome the fact that Community Governance Review will allow us to explore all options properly, openly and together, and most importantly, listen and let residents let us know what they want to do.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
Okay, thank you, Lord Mayor. I think whether we are on the pro or anti-town council camp, this is the announcement that Councillor Cornell made earlier this evening is something that can be welcomed because it can finally answer the question of whether it is a road that we should be going down. I want to share some thoughts as one of the councillors who served on the previous task and finish group for the Whitstable Town Council proposal and for the Bread and Cheesefield proposal. On procedural points, if this does go ahead, that I would like to see. So Firstly, the motion rightly highlights democratic deficit. You know, we need to make sure that in a local democracy, we're getting democracy right. And in the Whitstable Town Council review, we held a large-scale consultation that Victoria Asamaki, one of the council officers at the time, described as a particularly high result for a local consultation. And that consultation firmly rejected the idea of a town council in Whitstable. We do not know for a fact whether views in Whitstable have changed since then, and we don't have any indicator of what the views are in Canterbury or Herne Bay for a town council at this time. A community governance review must be guided by a robust consultation process, and I'm sure it will be, to determine what residents of the unparished areas in our district actually want, doing what they want us to do rather than doing things at them, which I think is very, very important. I also think a significant matter that arose from the previous Whitstable Town Council task and finish group was how household expenses could increase with additional precepts and how that could affect cost of living. I believe this council is committed to ensuring that cost of living is as low as possible and that people in our deprived areas are not disadvantaged. I think we proved that this evening with a couple of the decisions we've made this evening. I want this community governance review to include a robust analysis of deprivation rates and local cost of living and potential precept rates and how these could impact each other. That is not to reject these proposals outright, that is just that I want these to be a consideration, because I would not want the poorest in our society to be punished if we were to go down this road. Thank you to the Cabinet for all the work you've done on this and will be doing on this, and thank you to all the community groups for raising this. Yeah, you're doing a great job, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Heaver.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just a couple of points that are very much focused on my ward, really, and starting off with sympathy for the views that were expressed by Councillor Cornell at the beginning about the public interest not being significant. And I think he referred to rolling of eyes. I think Councillor Naomi Smith said about district-wide demand for a community governance review. But you might also apply exactly those phrases to the whole LGR project as a sort of top-down project with very little enthusiasm from the bottom up. But we are where we are. And even though I'm a bit of an agnostic on town councils, I don't think whether or not town councils are a good idea is really the most relevant subject of the debate tonight, although it's always interesting to listen. I think the key thing is do we do a CGR, because it's a massive piece of work, it's an expensive piece of work. Is it worthwhile to do this for local residents? Or is it a little bit of democratic navel-gazing for politicos? And in my view, it is, and in my colleagues' view, it is, for the main reason because the political landscape has changed. This isn't repeat of what may or may not happened in Whitstable last time. We have unitary authorities, or we will have unitary authorities, and that is why there should be a CGR to go with that project, as it is in most other districts and boroughs in Kent. This council would be quite unusual, in fact very unusual, if we didn't do one. It's not exciting, it hasn't got lots of public enthusiasm, but it is our duty to do it for two reasons that I can think of specific to my ward, rather than use the phrase democratic deficit, where most people's eyes glaze over. The political reality, of course, as we're all aware, is that we now have Reform UK running Kent County Council and running very well in the polls. So there's quite a realistic or feasible possibility in Whitstable that we'll have a East Kent unitary authority, maybe in Ashford, run by an authority which doesn't believe in man-made climate change, refutes sea level rises in coastal towns, has quite extreme views on the people that commit violent sexual abuse against women and where they come from and what they do, and we will be left at their mercy, so to speak, with no town council or any other representative body as a counterbalance to that. And I think that's a very dangerous situation, and however expensive and difficult the project might be, I think it is worthwhile doing. And also in terms of how it should be done, we should be emphasising to residents this is not, to go back to Councillor Cornell's quite valid concern, about having more councillors and trying to get people involved in local democracy. People are busy, they've got a cost of living crisis, they've got lots of other things to worry about. We need to explain in simple terms the political landscape has changed. It's changed, and that's why we're giving you the opportunity, or trying to give people the opportunity, to tell us what they would like in terms of local representation. And the other specific thing briefly is assets. We have council-owned assets in Whitstable. We don't want them flogged off by Reform UK or any other administration in the future without any say-so in the matter.
Thank you, Councillor Watkins.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. Lots of really good points so far. I'll throw one more into the mix and then answer the challenge which Councillor Chris Cornell has set us. I was just going to say up front, because it hasn't been mentioned so much, obviously the democratic deficit, the approach of unitaries, that is all key. Indeed, informs my own view. I've been a little bit sceptical, I suppose you might say, about the true need in Herne Bay or indeed elsewhere for town councils. But I think, the unitaries are a big deal. And I think that is why now, with that sort of game changer upon us, we should do this review. One point not made maybe is worth saying, that although there's a whole discussion about how local your representatives are and the democratic deficit, and some good points from Naomi in regard to that, there is another reason for having town or parish councils, I think, which is just that sometimes very micro kind of like local services, they're just better delivered. It's more efficient and more effective for, say, a parish council to deliver than a big clunking, higher tier council to try and deliver. And it captures more civic pride in towns or villages which people identify with. So I think there's all of that, even though some residents will never care about different tiers of council, but the services will be better and they will care about that. So reasons to press ahead. £100,000 is a lot of money. And so to Chris's point, I'm just saying, doing this exercise, let's make education a big part of this. We don't know what the outcome should be, and actually I'm relatively open-minded and I appreciate there are people with strong views in the room, but the people will give their views. We don't know where it will go, the CGR. Let's make sure that whatever we choose to do, we have educated them about the system. Lots of people don't understand the system today. They don't understand two-tier councils, indeed three tiers in some ways. They won't necessarily understand that one road ahead is simply a unitary. And nothing else changing unless they already have a parish, which would stay the same. And then we've got to paint this new picture, haven't we, of unitary plus parishing everywhere. So we need to do a big education piece, and I would like to think with £100,000 we could do a big education piece and all the different ways that could be achieved. And then I think, we will feel like that part of the spend will have been really worthwhile, whatever the end outcome, even if people roundly reject every single proposal that goes to the table. It will help all of us do our jobs if all residents have a better understanding of where we stand today and what those outcomes can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flanagan and then Councillor Jupp.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm very pleased to hear that Cabinet will be considering a community governance review, and I do hope that Cabinet decides to push on with that. I note that most other areas of Kent, as far as I'm aware, districts are also going along this route. So I think it would be good if Canterbury was to consider the same. Why do I think that? Well, a number of these points have been made already, but that won't stop me from making them again. The goalposts have shifted. The goalposts have shifted in that we're going to end up in some areas of our district with just one tier of local government when we get to unitary authority level. Now, I think it's imperative in any CGR to outline a number of points, regardless of whether it's a town council we're thinking about or a trust or the old Canterbury area member forums, remember those, whatever form it takes. It's important to outline a number of key points. And those are, as Councillor Prentice said earlier, what it means to local residents, what it means in terms of services, what it means in terms of the cost to local residents. And I think there's a lot of experience that we can draw from the recent exercise we've gone through in Whitstable, and I'm not going to take sides in terms of the for and against in that particular campaign, but I think it is fair to say that one of the things that came out of that, certainly from my discussions with residents, was what would a town council mean for me? what does it cost me in terms of my council tax? So when we go out with a CGR, we have to be really aware that those are the questions that we will get. In the case of Whitstable, I think it's quite understandable that we will also get the question from residents, haven't we just had this discussion already? So therefore, we need to make it very, very clear why we're coming back to them, make it clear that we want to listen, and make it clear that the changes at government level, local government level, have come after that particular campaign that we went through in the previous CGR, and that's why we're coming back to them. I would not want to think for one moment that residents think that this is something we are trying to impose on them. A CGR should be going out to listen to residents' views, put in all the facts, as Councillor Watkins said, from an educational point of view to our residents, and above all, letting the residents decide. Because at the end of the day, it's the residents and the assent of the residents, the people, that we need to get from this in terms of what direction we take. So in summary, I think a CGR is needed, absolutely, because the goalposts have shifted. I think we need to put all the facts out there and provide as much information as we can. And that is very difficult because we don't have all of that in terms of what services could be provided and at what cost under any of the alternatives available. But we also need to just take stock from the Whitstable experience and what came out of that and let that inform any CGR process going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jupp.
So you've heard the sensible Lib Dems. Now it's time for the non-sensible Lib Dems. So I did actually write notes. I'm lucky enough that when I come to council, full council, I always think of Blean Forest rather than the whole place, because that's what we're supposed to do. But I like to think that if we sort of can set something up for the area as a whole, it leaves a legacy rather than leaving the democratic deficit. And whether people know it or not, I know that where I am, parish councils make a difference. They don't know it, but they're the ones that deal with the notice boards at the side of the road where you can advertise a village fair or a cake stall. They're the ones who are your neighbours, who are looking out on planning applications. Nobody really can be as local as a parish or a town councillor. That's just the nature of it. They have to be local to represent the place. I mean, I love living in a parished area because I know that if one of my neighbours wanted to do something really stupid, I would be protected because there'd be somebody looking out for it. I wouldn't necessarily even need to know about it, but they'd already have it covered. Obviously, I do know about it because I'm here, but not everyone is. So whether they know it or not, they're represented. And the money is always said, like the precept's really high, that sort of thing. It's worth it. It is just worth it. I consider it worth it, and I'm really quite poor. Just to feel looked after. The other thing is a practical thing. Please discuss with current parish councillors, the ones in this area, because they are the ones that are going to know already what to do. They've got more insight into it than we will. And yeah, consult them.
Councillor Buckman.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So while while I appreciate the work that parish councils and town councils all undertaken, the pressures they've been under doing this sort of work voluntarily most of the time, I do feel like the whole CGR is a bit like an episode of Deal or No Deal, because we don't actually have a clear understanding of what is in this box. I mean, what is the unitary council going to be? What powers will they have? What powers will they then delegate or take off parish councils going forward? I mean, will parish councils across the district then have to align all their thinking and policies so that one isn't operating different to another? And if we do a CGR, what basis can people base an opinion on if we don't know what we can offer them, what parish councils and what the unitaries are going to be offering? What costs are involved, what powers a parish or town council could have, it's going to be hard, I feel, to get people to engage if they don't know what they're engaging with, what the actual final outcome of anything is going to be. I mean, obviously, and I want to come off it a slightly different angle, as opposed to, I think we all know that, you know, the residents will be impacted by costs, and there's maybe a lack of engagement as shown in any election. In fact, I think in 2023, there was 29 uncontested parish council elections in the district. So, I mean, does this show people don't want to take up a role as a parish councillor or not? So, yeah, so the direction I would like to say is during this survey or consultation, will people be interested in taking up a role as being a parish councillor? Are they actually interested in doing it? Because obviously if it's voluntary at the moment, the time impact on them is very little, or not as much as it could be if there's more decision making and it becomes a more of a vital role. So, yeah, so will they need training? Will there be support for them? Will they have the time, the capacity and willingness to attend more meetings and to increase their workload? So I'd like to know if you contact, is it NALC or the National Association for their local councils, if there is a willingness of current parish councillors to take on this added workload. And yeah, and maybe even, you know, parish council might not be the option either. You know, there's like neighbourhood forums and resident associations. There must be other mechanisms that can engage with people. And, you know, there's lots of resident associations that, you know, as councillors we all deal with, and they're really, really active. And they're just as local as anything else. And, you know, they could either be in place of parish or town council or just complement them as such. But, you know, I still think, in my opinion, it just comes down to, it will come down to a lot of, will come down to cost, really. I think, you know, if families are still making the choice of whether to heat the house, cook a meal, etc., you know, an increase of 20, 50, say £50 a month will have a higher impact on people who are less, £50 a year, £20 a month, say. £10, it doesn't, look, it really doesn't matter what the cost, whatever the cost will be, will have an impact.
Sorry, can we just
some people might not feel the cost so much, others will. Yeah. And it's engaging with these people that is more important. Yeah. But how you engage with them, because they don't want, it's very difficult to engage because there's more important things going on in their lives. Yes. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think this is the perfect opportunity for our residents to be informed about the unitary change. I've spoken to loads of residents and they haven't got a clue what's going on. As for the Whitstable review, it didn't go down well, but we're in a completely different scenario now. You know, the whole council part is going to change, where you've got local councillors, whether you've got good new councillors coming in or whatever, you've got local councillors in your area that are more local. When we go to unitary, at the moment, you can go to Canterbury if you've got an issue. We don't know where you're going to go to after unitary. And people don't realise that, and they don't really know what's going on. So it's a perfect opportunity to let our residents know what's coming down the line. And basically what Mike Soul was saying about what it should look like and stuff, he's probably said it pretty much all. So thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Carnac.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm glad, Councillor Sol, that you mentioned your manifesto, because it saves me having to remind you of it. And Councillor Prentice, we don't have all the answers, and I think that's the point of why we're asking Cabinet to seriously consider agreeing to a CGR. We know the clock is ticking, and I've made this point before and I will make it again. We are the elected members at the moment, and it's our responsibility to represent our residents and give them all the options for local democracy and how their local areas are run. as we go through this LGR process. And many have mentioned it, the political landscape has completely changed over the past 14 months. We should not be leaving these decisions to as yet unelected and unknown councillors. It will be our legacy. However people decide what they want, however, whatever comes out of this CGR, we then have listened. And as leader, you have always said that this council is always in listening mode, and I think that's what's important. We should use our time that we have left to listen. And just a couple of small things. There is inertia across all local government. It's not just at parish level. Everyone struggles to get people to stand for district council and county councils. Actually, I think the bigger that local government gets, the more inertia there is, the more people disconnect with it, the more local it is. I'm unrepentantly pro Herne Bay and really getting it back up on its feet. And the residents there, as many of you will know, feel they're very hard done by, that they come bottom compared to Whitstable, bottom compared to Canterbury, and bottom compared to all the rural areas. They're going to feel so much worse in a unitary. So we need to hear their voice. It's only fair that we hear that voice. Lots of people have nostalgia for the old Herne Bay Urban District Council. I don't know whether they're right or wrong, but let's listen to them and hear what they say. And just very quickly, my own ward, part's parish, part isn't. The parish part, in my estimation, is much better resourced. And yes, Councillor Bland, I am on the ground and I do hear a lot, but my parish councillors really help me. They do so much work on planning applications. The recent solar application in Hoath, for instance, the work they put into that I worked with them on, I couldn't do that alone. But the parish councillors really did that. Who's going to do the highway improvement plans? Who's going to do the neighbourhood plans? Who applies for funding and who runs community assets in those unparished areas? So yes, I really commend the Cabinet to do the right thing and vote for a CGR. We don't know what the outcome's going to be, but at least we are listening to our residents. Thank you.
Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to build on some of the things that Councillor Carnac has said about parish.
Carry on, Peter.
Right, so I don't know what's going on.
Just carry on, Peter.
Go ahead.
Do I carry on?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to build on some of the things that Councillor Carnac said about parish councils. It's been said a couple of times tonight that in the 2023 elections there was very little enthusiasm for joining parish councils, and many of them were uncontested. And I, as one of those uncontested councillors, I can attest to that. But as someone, to use a phrase that's been used a lot, the political landscape has changed. There wasn't a CGR then, sorry, there wasn't a local government reorganisation then. What's come along since is that Canterbury Council provided the parishes with an overview. If you stood an election for in parish council in somewhere in the region, you knew you had Canterbury City Council above you, and that gap isn't so big. As many people have said today, they work well with their parish councillors in the parished areas. But we're removing that. The new unitary might not be anywhere near Canterbury. It might be based in Dover, it might be in Ashford, it might be somewhere else. You've now got this massive gap. So I think that would re-energise people. They'll think, actually, I want to stand for Canterbury. I want to stand on a parish council or town council. I want to stand for something because it's going to be very local. I don't want to be dictated to by Margate or Ramsgate or somewhere else like that. So I think this is actually an opportunity, if we do go for a CGR, to re-energise the purpose of parish councils. And I think some of the work that we can do, if the CGR goes ahead, is to redefine the scope of parish councils, the shape of them, and their general purpose. And I think that should be included in the scope. Something else that's been mentioned tonight is the cost of undertaking a CGR, and I don't think any of us can deny that there is going to be a fair amount of work and a fair amount of cost that will be involved. But if we don't do it and we have to do it later, it's going to cost us more money, and also it's not going to be a priority for Unitary. They're not going to spend a lot of effort. They're going to spend the first several years in defining their own scope at the Unitary level. And it's also been mentioned that we are a bit of an outlier at the moment. Other areas, big areas, not tiny towns, Margate, Ashford, Maidstone, Sittingbourne, Tunbridge Wells, Tunbridge, all sat and had a debate that we're having now and come to the conclusion a CGI is a good idea. They wouldn't have taken that lightly. They would have looked at it. They would have incurred significant costs themselves, but they decided that that was a good idea to do that. So finally, I'd just conclude by saying that I do support the Cabinet coming to the conclusion to undertake a CGR. I think it's been mentioned many times tonight that communication to our residents is absolutely essential. This mustn't be seen as a flippant political exercise just to satisfy the egos of some councillors. It's actually something that's really important to provide democracy to all of our residents. And something that's been mentioned again is about undertaking this at minimal cost to our residents. And I think that's something that needs to be baked into the CGR as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jones and then Councillor Turnbull.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll do my best not to repeat what's already been said, but thank you for what everyone has said this evening. From my perspective, will be unfortunately abolished in 18 months' time. It's very important to me that we as a council use our opportunity to ensure that we give the opportunity to the people who elected us and put us in this place democratically, the democratic opportunity to choose whether they wish to have a council, town or otherwise. And if they don't, they've had the opportunity. And if they do, that's fine. What guise that comes in, as Councillor Chris Cornell said tonight, it would be really good to hear those kind of views. What things are important are obviously the cost. Councillor Buckman is quite right, whatever that is, it is a cost to residents. How we focus on that, how we engage with people. And as a local councillor for Herne and Broomfield, along with my ward councillor, Councillor Paget, we're very lucky, like many of you here, to have a parish council, and we understand how they work. And the benefit of those in our communities are fantastic. So, for example, if Herne Bay, which is the town I'm kind of champion, it's where I am, is not to have a town council, let's say not by its choice, but it's just not having the opportunity not to do so, then it doesn't have a statutory voice. It is the back of the queue. It's such a difficult thing for you then to hear your voice. And when we go unitary, our fantastic district council will be gone, and that voice will be so far away. And unless you have excellent councillors who can be on the front foot and champion and understand what's going on in the ground, towns like my town in Herne Bay will not thrive. We have an opportunity here to give people that evidence and for them to understand, to choose. The Sheriff said the word first tonight, and that's the word legacy. It is a legacy which we can give to people if they wish to take it. It's our duty. We don't want to have a dereliction of duty by not doing this. It's our duty to do it. We've been all elected democratically to serve the people, and it's our way of ensuring that they know all of the facts and that we in this excellent council can deliver it. So it's really great to hear tonight that it's going to Cabinet to be discussed, and I hope the outcome of that is a review. Whatever that review is, that's fine. I know it's a lot of money, but what price democracy? That's all I would say on that. History will tell you there is no price for democracy, it's everything. Whatever it costs to be democratic and have that democracy is important to us, and we shouldn't take it lightly. I understand we've got money, we've got homeless people, we've got money's money at the end of the day, but democracy, for me, is why we're all here, while we're all passionate, we all have our different views, we have the right to have them because the people who we're trying to serve give us that right on their behalf. So we must do this on their behalf. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Turnbull.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This is great debate. Thanks very much to everybody for engaging, and it's been really good to get all this stuff out. There's lots of things which are coming up again. I'm not going to go over lots of things. What I want to say is, obviously, we know the vast majority of people in our district are much less informed about the proposed changes to Kent governance arrangements and implications of those changes than we are. The Labour government has stated its intention to make these changes from the top down, and plenty of local residents are asking why it's happening and why they haven't been consulted. So this council is in the fortunate position of being able to give its residents the chance to shape how they make their voices heard within the larger unitary council. And to best serve our residents at this time, we need to show ourselves to be forward-looking, thorough, caring and representative council. We need to be making good choices, acting in our residents' best interests in preparing for an uncertain future where cash-strapped councils will be looking at how to make ends meet. We need to explain clearly to our residents the direction local governance is going in and lay out before them the options available to them for making decisions locally on how their communities are shaped and how they ensure that their voices are heard. A full community governance review is arguably the best vehicle we have for achieving this aim. A community governance review represents one of the final opportunities for Canterbury City Council to do its residents a service and demonstrate that it is a council which puts the interests of its residents first. Thanks.
Thank you very much. The comments made at this meeting have been heard by the Cabinet members present and will be considered at their meeting. Dan Smith.
Thank you very much. It was interesting that my waving hand didn't get noticed until now. It's the maddies of the Blean Forest area against. Anyway, my points are, firstly, that we're in a slightly unique situation anyway with this change, in that there are other unitaries around the country and there are parishes within those unitaries. So I would ask that, one, that those may be sought to and approached for advice on how it works, so that we have some kind of informed decision, both with the towns and with the smaller parishes under a unitary structure. That might actually be quite helpful. It's also, I think several councillors have pointed out about the informing of the neighbours, of the residents. It would be good to inform them what the neighbouring towns and the rest of Kent is doing, the immediate surroundings. I would also like to just point out, as a member of from a parished area, largely parished area, when I drive home, and I drive down Rough Common Road, and you see the flower things set on the side, you see the daffodils coming through on the side bank. That's the parish council in action. When you go through Blean and you park in the park there, the park benches and things, the playing area, the kit and things, that is the parishes in action. This is the kind of things they do now, and it's what that would give, and the powers that they would advance on potentially with this change is something that needs to be borne in mind and brought to the attention of people in the unparished areas, so they're aware of what can be done. We've often talked about play areas that are run down in particular areas or have that potential. These are the kind of groups that would make sure that that doesn't happen, and that's what happens in the current parished areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dixie.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. One point which hasn't been made this evening is that Canterbury is blessed with many heritage assets. Some are of national importance. Do we want a unitary authority, probably based in Margate, maybe run by Reform, to manage these for us?
Yeah. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Representing an unparished area as well, I think this is very important. We haven't much discussed the way the CGR is going to be carried out, and I think that's the most important thing we should be looking at. So it's important the amount of information we get out to people and how we get it out. We've certainly, recent years, had quite a debacle in Herne Bay over the Plaza scheme with people. There was a consultation, and the amount of people who came forward and said they hadn't heard, didn't know anything about it. That's what we need to avoid, because, as Councillor Carnac said, there's a lot of people looking back to the days of the Urban District Council in Herne Bay. Not many of them left now, but in those, for the best part of the 20th century, council was run by councillors whose names, Eagledon, Ridout, Amos, names you still see around town, They run businesses and they run the council. It wasn't a conflict of interest because it was in everybody's interest to have Herne Bay doing well, which it did. And in those days, they built the King's Hall, they managed the pier, they ran the pier, they had built a town hall with a fraction of the number of residents we have today. And I don't understand how we can't run things locally to a better standard than we were. So I'm definitely in favour of a Herne Bay Town Council, but that's not the point of the discussion. The point of the discussion is how we do the review, whether we have a review and how we do it. And I think that's the important thing, is getting the information out to those people so they can have their say. We don't know how much it's going to cost them on a precept, but my feeling is there will still be 2 tiers that they're paying for because there won't be a Canterbury City Council anymore. So effectively, you know, economies of scale, it might be a lower cost with the savings. That's my view.
Thank you, everyone. The comments made at this meeting have been heard by the Cabinet members present and will be considered at the meeting on the 19th of January. So we're moving on now to item 11. Which is the representation of political groups on committees. I'd like to invite Councillor Alan Baldock to propose the resolution and Councillor Mike Saul to second it.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So this is the tidying up necessary with the election of our new councillor to the representations on each committee. So the representation of political groups on committees set up a political balance calculation for the agenda. So are you happy to second the proposal in the papers there for the new members on each committee?
Seconded, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Would any member like to speak? Okay. Andrea, can we go for a recorded vote?
And that's unanimous, Chair. Lord Mayor.
Thank you. We now move to item 12, changes to memberships. I'd like to request that councillors accept the changes to memberships of committees and subcommittees as listed in the agenda. And could I ask the group leaders if there are any other changes to committee memberships they would like to notify us this evening? Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, thank you. Just that yourself, Councillor Moses, has offered to join the subs bench, so to speak, on the planning committee, and that will be in our favour. So thank you, Councillor Moses, if it's accepted by yourselves. Thank you.
Can we confirm all those changes by general assent, please? Thank you. We're moving on to item 13. I'd like to invite Councillor Anna Baldock to propose and Councillor Mike Saul to second approval of meetings of the full council meetings of the 30th of October and the 20th of November.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Proposed for receipt and adoption, the council minutes are submitted for the 30th of October and the 20th of November. Thank you.
Seconded, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Andrew, can we take a recorded votes, please?
And that's carried with one abstention.
Thank you. Moving on to item 14. This is the report back on notice of motion on the Wealdon condition. Councillors are invited to note that the Cabinet considered the motion on the Wealdon condition at its meeting on the 8th of December 2025, minute 454. Cabinet resolved to agree to receive regular updates from Southern Water about the implementation of the environmental measures contained in its 2025 to 2030 asset management plan. As you will know, the decision has been called in and will be discussed at the special meeting of Scrutiny Committee on the 15th of January. Item 15th. I now invite the Joint Executive, Chief Executive to speak.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Usual message, the minutes will be dealt with in turn. The Lord Mayor will invite the relevant chair to propose the receipt and adoption of the minutes and then ask for a seconder for the proposal. Councillors are permitted to debate the minutes if they wish, but they cannot be amended. The only possible action, if there is disagreement on the accuracy of the minutes, is for them to be sent back to the relevant committee. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. I'll now invite chairs of the Cabinet Committee and someone else to propose. So that is the meeting of the 3rd of November, 20th of November, 8th of December. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I submit for receipt and adoption the minutes of the Cabinet. The meetings were held on the 3rd of November, the 20th of November and the 8th of December.
Seconded.
General assent. The same for the Cabinet Advisory Committee, which was held on the 27th of November. Go ahead, Councillor Hazen.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I submit for receipt and adoption the Cabinet Advisory Committee Housing minutes from the Thursday, the 27th of November 2025. Can I have a seconder, please?
Seconded.
General assent. Company Advisory Committee of meeting held on the 4th of December.
Thank you. I submit for receipt and adoption of the minutes of the Company's Advisory Committee on the 4th of December 2025, pages 110 to 116. Can I have a seconder, please? I don't even know who's in there. Anybody?
Can I second it if I wasn't actually at it? No.
Yeah, Rachel.
I don't second it then, Rachel. Sorry.
General assent. Licensing Subcommittee held on the 24th of September, 5th of November and 12th of November. Councillor Bland.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I propose for receipt and adoption the minutes of the Licensing Committee held on Wednesday, the 24th of September 25, Wednesday, the 5th of November 25, and Wednesday, the 12th of November 2025, as indicated in the pages marked. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded.
Thank you. General assent. Overview Committee held on the 9th of October, 6th of November. I'll invite Councillor Prentice.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I propose for receipt and adoption the minutes of the Overview Committee held on Thursday, the 9th of October 2025, pages 130 to 134, and also held on Thursday, the 6th of November, pages 135 to 139. Do I see a seconder, please?
Seconded, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. General assent. Planning Committee held on the 14th of October, 11th of November and 9th of December 2025. I'll invite Councillor Edwards to propose.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I submit for receipt and adoption the minutes of the Planning Committee on the 14th of October, 11th of November and 9th of December 2025, pages 140 to 151 of the agenda. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. General assent. Scrutiny Committee held on the 26th of November 2025. I invite Councillor Carnac to propose.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I submit for receipt and adoption the minutes of the Scrutiny Committee held on Wednesday, 26th of November 2025, pages 152 to 157. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded.
General assent. Whitstable Harbour Board meeting, 10th of October 2025. I will invite Councillor Chris Cornell to propose.
Mayor, I wasn't present. The chair of the meeting, Michael, is going to propose it on our behalf.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I beg to move for approval and adoption the minutes of the Whitstable Harbour Board held on the 10th of October.
Seconded, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Seems a long time ago now, doesn't it?
Thank you. General assent.
Just going to make a couple of comments.
There's none.
Can I make a couple of comments?
Okay, go on. Go ahead.
This was the last board meeting to be held at Whitstable Castle. All future board meetings are going to be held in the new community classroom in the South Quay shed. Some of you may have seen this classroom, but it's a great asset to the harbour. And we welcome having our board meetings there. And the second thing is that you probably noticed the council last year showed a surplus from the harbour of nearly £500,000, something I know Mike Saul appreciates. Thank you.
So we move on to item 16. There are no urgent decisions to bring before this meeting. There are no urgent business. Thank you all for coming. This meeting is now